here at Crafty Hope, and welcome! It is time for my week 37 mixed media prompt project for Crafty Hope prompts. So this is my project portion of the challenge that is called Crafty Hope prompts. It's a challenge I created for myself. I started back in October. That's how I'm on week 37. And each Monday I draw 3 prompts from a list. I have 156 prompts. I'll have that link of lists for you below if you just want a list of links and want to play along or pull your own prompts or whatever. But every Monday I pull 3 prompts and alter a playing card that I am going to use as a prompt card later. So I alter both sides of the card with those 3 prompts, and then each Saturday I take those same 3 prompts and do another project, something different. Sometimes art journal page, sometimes a little assemblage, sometimes it's a tag. I've done bookmarks and altered cans and all kinds of stuff. This week's gonna be a little bit different. Before I get to that, not completely different, but a little different. Before I get to that, let me go ahead and tell you that you are welcome to play along on this challenge. You don't have to do a card and a project like I am. I'm just doing this to kind of like build up some ideas of how to use these 3 prompts together. Like I said before, you could draw your own prompts from my list, or you can use the same 3 I'm using and make a card, make a tag, play in your art journal, whatever. I just ask that you use that hashtag CraftyHopePrompts and possibly tag me, because Instagram has changed some stuff and I'm having a harder and harder time finding people when they participate, unless I get tagged, because they've changed. Like if you do a hashtag search, it only shows you the top ones and not the most recent. It's frustrating. So please tag me so I can find you and see what you do, especially on Instagram. If you do something here on YouTube or Twitter, you know, that works kind of the same way. Facebook as well. It's easier if you show me what you did. That way they let me know you did it. Because my searches are coming up badly lately. Okay, anyway, week 37, I pulled the prompts, book page, sandpaper, and hearts, and made this card. I'll put a link up here to the making of this card. And now it's time to do a different project. And something, I don't know, I struggle with hearts, I'll tell you that much. So when I was thinking, how do I most often use sandpaper? Now what I did in here is a great way to use it. But one of the main ways I use sandpaper or sanding blocks and things like that is in my jewelry. Files, all of those things get used in my jewelry. So I thought I might make some jewelry, some mixed media jewelry for you today. So what I have pulled out for book page, I have pulled out a yearbook. This is a 1959 yearbook. I have picked out this picture here with this couple on it. Yes, another couple. I mean, it's hearts. What am I supposed to do? So that is my book page. For sandpaper, I do have a couple of my sanding blocks along with some steel wool that I will use, and then hearts. So I'm going to bring hearts in 2 different ways, I think. One, oh, I'm losing my book page over here. One, I have a mold for UV resin that has this little heart and image or shape here. And I think I'm going to put my book page in there. Now I might need sandpaper, something to sand it when it comes out if the edges aren't quite right, but more than anything I use those with old tin. This is part of an old cookie tin. You can see it's red because heart's traditionally red. And I will use another heart image. Where's my heart on here? Uh-oh, there it is. It's right there in the middle. So I have this heart image here that I will trace onto here and somehow combine these things into, I think, a pair of earrings is what I am going to do. Now I have done, I think it was my first week, I did a project that was like a mix. I can't even remember what my actual mixed media project was, but then I also did some mixed media jewelry, which I believe were also some tin earrings. So we're kind of going back to those basics, but this is experimental because I have not tried to get a shape like this into one of these molds. So I'm going to have to work out a stencil of some kind because this one is a bit bigger as you can see, than that one, but not by much. I wonder if I just, I might trace it and then cut it down just a little bit farther in. That might be the best way to do it and see how it does. Okay guys, so I will probably voice over the rest of this and I'll see you on the other side. I absolutely changed my mind on how I was going to get that or those images in my heart. So instead of trying to trace it, because I did try to trace it in that, but I realized quickly it wasn't going to work. So I went ahead and put my UV resin in my little mold, and I took it and put it under my UV light until it was cured. So that, and it was easy enough to pop out. So I did have a little overflow, so I'm just cutting that off with some scissors, and I will go ahead and grab one of my sanding blocks and sand that down just the tiniest bit. So here, sandpaper brought right in right off the bat. Now I will, once I get this one down, I'm going to go ahead and pour more UV resin and cure it. Y'all don't need to see me do that again. The curing for UV resin is minimal, so y'all, that takes, I'm trying to think, it took me less than 3 minutes to do it. It really could take you less, but I over cure. Alright, so what I decided to do was trace my actual resin piece around my images, because this is clear resin, I could see it. Easy enough. I tried it with pencil there first, and y'all, that was silly. I was like, I'll never see that pencil. I'm just going to use this pen, go around it. So that was one of my hearts, I think. And so I was trying to do it with that other guy on the page, and his head was just like too big or something. I was like, he's not going to fit the way I want. So I try another guy on the page. And I end up having to just pull out another page from the yearbook. It was one I apparently had already pulled out of the yearbook previously. So I'm looking at different, I guess, football players. And I find this one at the bottom who's got the right size head or a smaller sized head that will fit in one of my hearts. And I have flipped the heart over from the way it was oriented on the girl, because I kind of wanted them to hang at different angles, and the way that that hole is in that one, it's going to hang at an angle. So yeah, I wanted them to be, yeah. So there's my two hearts, and I'm going to look at them. I'm putting them back on there, and I have a mechanical pencil, and I've put the lead way out so I can mark where the holes are going to be on this, just so I know when I'm putting them on there that to kind of leave those spaces free. I'm not going to punch them till later. Alright, so with some detail scissors here, I will fussy cut these hearts out. They're not going to be exact, they're not going to be perfect, and that's fine because we can fix that later. I'm just going to get them cut down as best I can with these little detail scissors. So I love these. I bought these a bazillion years ago when I was way into decoupage, and they were in like the decoupage section of, I believe, Michael's when I bought them. I did have a little trouble seeing the heart on there because that was so dark on that side of the picture, but I'll have a little more success with this one because there's a lot more of the white background on here. And this worked better than trying to insert I suppose I could have inserted with the little dingham hopper inside the mold that was for the hole. It was going to be really difficult to get those in there. So what I am doing instead, I'm going to ink the edges of this just to give them some age and take some of the white, I guess, off of it. And not that it's going to matter, because in a little bit I will cut them down more, and I probably should have not sanded them and darkened them again. Gracious, y'all. I have to tell you that these earrings, I love them. I hope y'all do too. And I know a lot of y'all come here for my mixed media, like art journaling and stuff like that. And so this is probably disappointing, but this is what I do. I hop around with things, assemblages and jewelry and art journaling. And yeah, this is just one of those things. So I'm using a cheap plastic paintbrush and some of the UV resin, and I am painting the back of these hearts and sticking them right on my image. I don't get quite enough. I'm going to try to stick this down on his face, and it doesn't, yeah, I'm like, oh, I didn't get enough on there, so I have to add a bit more. That one also,
I don't think was quite level enough when I put it into cure. I should have let it sit for just a second and level out because it's not near as flat as I had hoped. So I will take these and put them under the UV lamp again to cure them face up like this so that those faces are now stuck. So any of that excess paper that's hanging off the edge, again, I'm going to trim around the edges with my scissors, and then I will grab my sanding block and sand off some of that excess. So I'll do this a couple times as I find more of that excess hanging off, but because it's got resin on it, I'm having trouble feeling it because it's cured hard. So I have to kind of just see it. And it trims fine with my good scissors. So alright, so I am from there going to paint the back of these just a little bit with some white gesso to try to cover up some of the images in the back. I could have used black gesso or anything really that would have covered these up. I just kind of wanted it lightly covered. That one isn't so bad. This one's a bit, you can see like a head there, and I wanted that obscured. Sorry, I kept looking at my watch. I think a thunderstorm was rolling in and my phone kept warning me that weather was coming. So, see, and there I had found an issue there, so I'm sanding it down a little. So, yeah, I'll bring in the sanding again. But here I've got heart and book page all in here at one thing. So, I felt like I was cheating just a little bit with the book yearbook page. I was like, you know what, let me go ahead and bring an actual book page in. So I pulled out an old novel and I'm looking through it for either a word or combination of words that I can put on the back of these to make them interesting. So the first one I find, it says delighted. So I go ahead and cut it out to see if I can get it to fit on these hearts, make sure it's not too long. And I found that if I put it at an angle that it works pretty well. But first I wanted to go ahead and punch my holes so that I don't cover that up. So I'm using this Tim Holtz Pokey tool from Tonic Studios to find my hole and punch that, just get that through the resin and the paper that's there. And again, see more bits of trimming because I'm like, oh, there's still paper hanging off this. So yeah, I trimmed that down and I'm putting it aside. So what did I do now? Oh, I'm looking for an actual nail file to get some of that paper off because my big sanding block just wasn't cutting it, was too big for like that dip between the hearts. So I got a nail file because it's nothing but sandpaper basically, right? So, and then I will, poke the hole in there, and I'll have to poke these holes, excuse me, again later because when I add resin to the back of this, it kind of, everything gets a little wonky. So I go ahead and also inked the back of this just to give it a little age, little something else other than that face on there, that you can see part of that head. All right, so now I have to pick out a second word. So I've got delighted on there. I haven't picked out my second word yet, have I? Oh, I guess I decided to go ahead and stick delighted down. So I'm using some gloss Mod Podge and I'm making sure I put delighted on the back of the girl for some reason. I just felt like, I don't know, she seemed delighted, her look on her face. And so I'm putting the Mod Podge directly onto the back of the heart and then sticking the paper in it and covering that word with the Mod Podge. This will help seal that little strip of paper from the resin soaking in too much. It was just something like a little extra step I wanted to do. All right, so I looked in that book page for another word and I didn't really want to use it, but I found the word handsome. And to me in my head, I've decided that that's how they each feel. Like she feels delighted and he feels handsome. So he's a little full of himself. So that's just how it like worked out in my head. So I'm doing that same process of putting the Mod Podge directly on the heart, then sticking that word in and sealing over the top of it. So I'm going to heat these real quick to make sure they dry and are good and sealed. And then I'm going to grab that UV resin and my paintbrush again and paint lightly over the top of both of these like words. But I'm going to cover the whole heart, because if I just covered the words, it's going to be, you're not going to get that shine and seal on the whole back of that. So I wanted to make sure that the front and the back of that paper that we added is sealed on there. So yeah, that's what I'm doing, making sure I get plenty enough on there that it's a good level on them. So that's a lot of dipping, and I'm trying to avoid the holes that I have punched for the most part. If a little bit gets on there, that's fine. I just don't want the resin to pour into those holes. Okay, so I set those aside to cure under the lamp, and while they were doing that, I decided let's start on the 10. So I have my stencil here, and this is just a fine tip Sharpie that I am tracing these heart shapes on, trying to find ways to put those on there that will produce the least amount of waste. I do try to recycle these little bits, but I still don't want to waste a whole lot. So I've cut them down. I'm using some tin snips that I absolutely love. I will put a link to those below, along with any of the other materials that I can. So I'm using these tin snips to cut the shape out. Now hearts are a little bit tricky for me with the tin snips. There are some people that are great with cutting things like that, but I have to go about these crazy methods because apparently I can only work in one direction. So, and I'm using that little bucket that I have there. It's a tabletop trash can basically, to catch any little bits of tin that I cut off because they are super sharp. So, and I don't want them on my desk for me to pull my hand across and cut myself. It has happened. So, be very careful with that. So, I'm having trouble with that little divot there. I think I'm going to pull in some some jewelry pliers just to pull it off. And so that is my heart. And I cut the other one, and once they're both cut, I'm using some rubbing alcohol to remove any of that permanent marks that were on there, just because I'm going to sand it and that's going to take most of it, but for me, just a quick douse with some alcohol is fine. All right, so now we're going to bring in those sanding blocks again, and I start with the coarsest one that I feel I'm comfortable with. Oh, I still had a little divot there that was making me crazy. Excuse me. So I'm messing with it, trying to decide if I can sand it off, and I think I decided I could. And when I sand, I make sure I sand the front, the back, and that whole edge, just to make sure there's nothing prickly. And any points, like at the bottom of that heart, I just trim them down, just that very tippy tip of the point, so that nothing is pokey and will hurt somebody. So I start with the coarsest grit sandpaper that I feel comfortable with. It doesn't have to be the absolute coarsest I have, but like on the medium to coarse sanding blocks, I start with the medium one, and then I move down, to the fine to medium sanding block, and I just kind of move down them to slowly sand them down. And I usually finish with the steel wool. This is like 0000 steel wool, and y'all, it makes the edges of these feel like butter. I love the steel wool. So I'm still messing with that little divot. I finally get it after, I think it was off camera, to make it feel better. I did some hammering and some trimming and some little excess things. Hearts, like I said, are a hard shape to do. So once I got both the edges and sanded, I decided to rough them up a little bit, the same way I did the photo on the card, to just get a little bit additional age on them. So I'm just scratching into that enamel a tiny bit with a couple of the different grits of sandpaper. Once those are done and my hearts are cured, I start trying to figure out how I want them to lay out, how I want the metal hearts to hang, and the knowing where the hole is on the resin hearts. So I'm moving those around, and then I will grab some, I believe it's a 1.8 millimeter metal punch. And so I'm going to have these hang kind of sideways, since the resin ones also hang sideways. It just gave it a little bit of consistency. So I'm punching holes in the side of the hearts from which the resin will hang, and then at the like the corner of one of the lumps of heart. So on both of them. And when I get them punched, I like to take a little hammer on a bench block and just pound the back of those flat. Again, that helps ensure that there's nothing like poking or odd on it. That one took me a little while to get aligned. Y'all, my biggest thing is to not get the edges, because if you punch through a hole, punch through the side of one of those, there's no way to fix it. You just have to start over. You have to go cut out another heart and sand it and do all of the things to start over. So it's one of those things. All right, so I have come in with my bead mat just to kind of give you a better look at this, and some very large jump rings. And I'm using the large jump rings because that resin is really thick and I need it to, those jump rings to kind of go through that. Now, this is where I had a little bit of trouble getting the jump rings, the holes where I had poked the before through the paper were not quite big enough to get the jump rings through, because these big ones are a little thick. So I'm using a bunch of different things. I used like a T-pin, and that's that pokey, and that ends up working. What I could have gotten was a bead reamer out, and that would have been fine, or even a little tiny like hand drill would have worked, or something like that to expand that hole. But I got my jump ring through. I thought I was going to add a couple more jump rings to this, but once I looked at how large that one jump ring was, I was like, no, that's all I need. So I slipped on my heart, and I'll show you this again. I'm going to make this hole a bit bigger, and then slip on my jump ring, and then slip on my metal heart and close it. And once that is closed, all I need to do is add some ear wires. So I grab a couple of ear wires, and I will just twist those open and slip on the metal hearts, making sure that the red portion is facing the front. And that's it, guys. That is my mixed media prompt project for week 37 of Crafty Hope prompts. I hope you liked this. I'm sorry it's not an art journal page or a tag or something more painty, but it's always fun to learn something new, I think, and it still uses some of the similar things we would use in art journaling. So if you like this, make sure to give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and let me know if you have any questions at all about any of this. I would be happy to help you. I appreciate that you came and spent this time with me. I will see y'all very soon. Bye.